Hey there, this is Dr. Kingston, and in this video we are going to be doing an introduction to the gastrointestinal system. This first video in this series will be a walkthrough of the digestive organs and an introduction to their functions. We're also going to spend a good amount of time discussing their organization and the organization of their blood and nervous supply and how that relates to the way that these organs develop. So to start off with, let's talk about what is the purpose of the gastrointestinal system. And put very simply, its purpose is to take big pieces of food that are made up of lots of different components and break them down into the tiny little things that your body can actually use as fuel. We need fuel for energy, certainly, but we also need quite a lot of it for healing and growth throughout our life as well. So we eat vegetables and meats and grains, and our gastrointestinal system turns them into fatty acids and amino acids and glucose, and it ends up working better than plugging us into an outlet. The functions of the digestive system, or the digestive processes then, are the specific actions that break down food particles into even smaller molecules that the body can work with on a cellular level. These are going to be ingestion, or bringing food into the body, secretion, or cellular production of substances that are going to break down components of ingested food, mixing and propulsion, which will expose the ingested food really thoroughly to digestive secretions and move it through the digestive tract. We have two types of digestion: mechanical digestion, which is like chewing, which physically breaks down food into smaller pieces, and then chemical digestion, which breaks food apart at a molecular level. After that comes absorption, or taking nutrients that have been digested out of the food into our bloodstream. And finally, defecation, or removing the unused waste of what we've ingested. All right, so everything we talk about in this unit here will come back to these processes. For each organ that we look at, we'll talk about which of these it is fulfilling and what its structures are kind of shaped around. The gastrointestinal system can be divided up into organs that make up the actual digestive tract, or the alimentary canal. So the tube organs, okay, they make up the tube, and then the accessory digestive organs that support digestion without being part of the tube itself, okay? So they might assist with mechanical digestion, or they might secrete digestive juices, but the digesting food and chyme does not pass through them at all. So if we were to take a nice trip through the alimentary canal here, we would begin up here in the mouth, or the oral cavity. And as we're passing through, we would run into the teeth. We would get pushed back into the pharynx by the tongue. And then we would continue to travel down through the esophagus. The esophagus would bring us into the stomach. And the stomach connects down here to the small intestine. Within the small intestine, we would find some connections to the liver and to the pancreas, where they're going to secrete some digestive juices into the small intestine. We would travel all the way through here, end up in the large intestine, and travel all the way through and back out. All right? So all of these organs that make up the canal part of the alimentary canal develop from a single embryonic gut tube, right? Just one simple tube. If you look at letter A here, here it is. Very nice. This tube then is going to rotate and fold in on itself in the abdomen as it grows, and it's going to produce these very characteristic loops of bowel that we see at birth and then beyond. Now, I don't want you to worry about what is folding and going where, okay? So heed my little note down here. I want you to understand just that this starts off as a simple straight tube and then rotates to become more complicated. Why do I want you to understand this? Well, because it's a really great way to organize the full-grown structures, even though they look more complicated. All right, when we're looking at a simple tube like this, it's easy to divide it up into regions, like so. I can just draw lines right across it and do it. And now that I've put these on here for you, what I want you to also notice is that this separates the regions of the gut by which artery is supplying them. So those go right through the place where those would overlap. And you can't see it in this image because it's not drawn on here, but this is the same for the veins draining these regions and the nerves supplying them as well. Okay, so everything up here in the teal would be supplied by this little artery and its corresponding vein, this one for blue, and this one for the light green down here. We're going to name these divisions based on their position. So up here in teal is going to be the foregut. It is served by the celiac artery, usually called the celiac trunk, and the celiac nerve plexus and splenic vein. Blue is the midgut, and it is served by the superior mesenteric artery, vein, and nerve plexus. And the light green down here is the hindgut, and it is served by the inferior mesenteric artery, vein, and nerve plexus. Now, the really great thing is that these relationships are going to persist even after that gut is fully developed, even after it elongates and twists around into what we see in adults. Organs that develop from the foregut are still supplied by the celiac artery. Organs from the hindgut are still drained by the inferior mesenteric vein, and so on and so forth. So if you're able to categorize your GI organs into fore, middle, and hindgut, you are able to deduce their blood supply and their innervation pattern without even trying too hard. And for your learning pleasure, I have taken the liberty of doing that for you here. So you can see that the organs do stay in generally the same position. The foregut begins at the esophagus and continues down through about halfway through the duodenum. Okay, so it changes right here between the second and third parts. From there, the midgut is going to extend through the rest of the duodenum, jejunum and ileum that make up the rest of the small intestine, cecum, ascending colon, and 2/3 of the transverse colon. And then the hindgut is the rest of the transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and a little bit of the anal canal. All right, so it will very much behoove you to commit these relationships to memory. Get it in your head which organs are part of the foregut, the midgut, and the hindgut. It's going to help you immensely throughout the rest of this unit. All right, and that is it for our introduction. So let's end up here with a quick review question. Which artery supplies the descending colon? The answer here is C, the inferior mesenteric. The descending colon is part of the hindgut, and the hindgut is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. Here we can see that. Here's your descending colon. It is after this divide at the third distal portion of the transverse colon, so it is going to be inferior mesenteric. And that brings us to the end. I will see you in the next video.